Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin' Robbie Billups, and it's time for my top 20 comics of 2023. That's right, everybody. Another year come and gone in the comic book world. We've had some ups, we've had some downs, but all in all, we've had some really solid reads this year. So here, let me break it down. These, in my opinion, are the top 20 comics of the year. At number 20, Doctor Strange Fall Sunrise from Marvel Comics. Doctor Strange Fall Sunrise was an absolutely captivating book visually. Now, story-wise, it was a little bit challenging, but Tradd Moore really packed in a lot of visual detail in this book, making a very psychedelic experience out of it, and that's how a Doctor Strange book should be represented visually, in my opinion. Now, Marvel released a treasury-sized edition of this graphic novel earlier this year. It is absolutely stunning, and it is gorgeous. Now, the story may be challenging, and even right now, I couldn't really tell you what the full story was, but it rewards rereading, not just because of the challenging nature of that story, but because of the complex density of that psychedelic artwork. It is pretty much a visual masterpiece, in my opinion. At number 19, The Penguin from DC Comics. Tom King has been a little hit or miss for me this year, but The Penguin is definitely a standout. Now, I didn't even really like the first issue that much. I kind of gave it a negative review, but issue number 2 was one of my favorite single issues of the year. The story is encapsulating the journey back to greatness for Oswald Cobblepot the Penguin. He's been ousted as a crime boss, and he's making a slow, methodical, and truly menacing journey back into Gotham to take that power back. You got cool characters like the Help, cool characters like Black Spider, and the purpose of this book, or should I say the structure of this book, is what I really find fascinating. You don't get inside of Oswald's head, just all of the perspectives around him, and is truly building up the Penguin as a menacing, foreboding, and mysterious figure. This book's got a great noirish, dark kind of tone to it artistically, which helps really accentuate the tone of the book. Raphael de la Torre doing a fantastic job with it. That's one of my favorite Tom King books this year. At number 18, Local Man from Image Comics. Local Man has been a really solid, down-to-earth book about a retired former superhero from the extreme days of the 90s, right? Imagine like a 90s Image superhero who is no longer allowed to use that name, to use those powers. He's been completely banned from superheroing, so he has to go back to his small hometown and kind of deal with everything there, everything that he left behind. So it's got this real gritty sense of reality to it, but in the midst of that is this backstory of this dude having been an incredibly extreme 90s superhero. It's got Brubaker and Phillips kind of vibes to it. Tony Fleece's artwork is absolutely fantastic, and him, along with Tim Seeley, have crafted a very personal, innovative, and truly captivating tale with a tinge of nostalgia, but it's doing something grounded and very, very real with it, and very honest. At number 17, The Punisher from Marvel Comics. Now, I'm talking about the conclusion of the Jason Aaron run. Now, this made an appearance last year on my top 20. I was blown away, but I was a little bit nervous about how Jason Aaron would wrap this run up, and I will tell you this. This has gone down as one of my top 3 favorite Punisher stories of all time, right behind works of like Garth Ennis and Jason Aaron. Jason Aaron's already done a really solid run on the Punisher, but this one's packed with a lot more nuance, a lot more humanity, and probably one of the best, most well-rounded looks at the Punisher, his mission, his purpose, and his entire world that I've ever read. And the character of Maria Castle has never been as fleshed out as she was in this book. Now, at first, when we hear that Frank Castle is joining the Hand, it seemed like that would just be silly. Another silly thing for them to do with the Punisher. However, it turned into a really great introspective look at Frank Castle, his life, and who he is as a man, his failings, and even the true nature of the heroism within him. It ended the Punisher's run for a minute, but it definitely set up a return, and I really, really can't wait to see how this will continue on. And the artwork by Jesus Saez, Paul Ezeketa, was absolutely phenomenal. 2 different styles, but it never felt like they were clashing, because structurally they were visually showing us different parts of Frank's life, the current day and the past, but it all worked together in one nice unifying feel that just really blows me away. I love that Punisher book. At number 16, The Seasons Have Teeth from Boom Studios. Dan Waters is such a great writer. His use of language, his use of theme, his use of character, it is all on perfect display here in The Seasons Have Teeth. The tale of a world in which every time a new season arrives, it's actually represented by this monstrous avatar, this giant figure that comes in and just destroys, right? So in telling that simple story, he's also elaborating on themes of life, the seasons of life. What is it like to be in the spring of your life with new love and new meaning and new purpose? What's it like to be in the summer where you're like super victorious? What's it like in the fall of your life where things seem to be falling apart? Or the winter where it seems like everything's slowing to a crawl, inevitably leading to our untimely or timely death. This was such an amazing book. The artwork was fantastic all the way throughout, especially the coloring, because the coloring goes from these bleak tones to these very vibrant tones when each season gets near. But it's about a man trying to deal with guilt, trying to deal with regret, and also at the same time looking forward, reflecting on his own life and helping us reflect on ours. At number 15, Once Upon a Time at the End of the World from Boom Studios. Jason Aaron had a really good rebound year for me this year, and a little bit of last year with the start of the Punisher run. I did not really care much for his Avengers run, but the work he turned out in 2023 was absolutely stellar. Now, Once Upon a Time at the End of the World is exactly what the title would have you believe that it is. It's a story about the end of the world and what happens after. So it's post-apocalyptic, but it's really a story about a relationship. These two main characters who meet at the end of the world and fall in love. Now, the second arc, because I did like the first arc, but the second arc was so freaking crazy special to me. It was such a step up. It was dealing with the idea that they are now fully in love and their relationship. It's exploring themes of polyamory, both the dangers and the benefits of it. And I really, really appreciate this book because it just doesn't paint things all nice and hunky-dory, and it just doesn't paint things as all tragic and terrible. It has a lot of nuance to it, but it's also a sad book because of its use of real emotion, the way it's actually telling a true story of a relationship coming together, blossoming, falling apart, hopefully coming back together. I don't know. I am riveted by this book. Different art teams switching in and out, but it works. The characters are so freaking strong in this book, and Arc 2 kicked Arc 1's ass. At number 14, Kaya from Image Comics. Wes Craig's Kaya has been one of the most underappreciated books for the last year and a half. It is absolutely fantastic. So it's a very simple story about this woman who's trying to protect the chosen one. It sounds like a story we've read many times, and there's nothing super like stand outish about the plot of the book or even necessarily the characters, but the way the story is told, especially visually. Wes Craig is a master. Now you can look at this book and definitely tell that it's the Wes Craig that we know and love from books like Deadly Class, but it's a little bit of a different vibe, a little bit of a different flavor. It's an all ages-esque type book that is so freaking strong. It's dealing with raw emotion and raw visual language. It's got wide panel gutters, not any panel borders. It has this spacious sense and fantastical world building, and the colors pop so freaking well in this book. The characters are expressive. They emote across the page. It leaps out and just grabs you by the throat and chokes you so you know exactly what the characters are feeling in the book. It's great. It gets right to the point, but it's having time to play around and build this world and these people up, and it's absolutely a stunning work of art. At number 13, Lovesick from Image Comics. Luana Viccio's Lovesick. When I first read this book, I thought it was a little bit derivative of some of the ideas that were already being played around with in the book Red Room, which I absolutely love, talking about the idea of snuff films and things like that. But Lovesick very quickly distinguishes itself from Red Room and anything else that deals with these kind of topics, like the movie 8mm, for instance, which I don't think is a good movie, but it just popped in my head when I think of snuff films. Anyway, Lovesick has a sensuality about it that is unsettling and unnerving and also incredibly engaging, enthralling, and captivating. And it's dealing with really interesting themes about sexuality, really interesting themes about identity, and just so freaking weird. Like, and I mean that in the best way possible. Every time I read the book, it would make me sweaty with nervousness. It would make me sweaty and my pulse go up with its sensual nature and its sexiness, right? But at the same time, it's grotesque, it's disgusting, it's riveting and engaging. It's absolutely so freaking crazy to me. I love this book, and I love how transgressive and subversive this book is. It does not hold anything back. You're going to be talking about murder, we're showing it to you. We're going to be talking about sex, we're showing it to you. We're going to be talking about depraved activities and the enlightenment and heightenment of the soul. We're going to show that to you as well. It is gnarly, it is wild, it is so sleek, sexy, disturbingly cool. It's just one of my favorite books of the year. Absolutely. It's not going to be for everybody, but it's definitely made for me, and it gives me the vibe of some of those really thought-provoking, more sleazy-sided stories and movies that I love from back in the 70s and 80s. It is raw. It is bold. It's bold and daring, and I love it for that. And once again, you have to have the disclaimer: in no way do anybody here at PCP endorse cannibalism or find it sexy. At number 12, Detective Comics from DC Comics. So Ron V started his run on Detective Comics this year, and I believe that this is going to be a perennial, evergreen book that we will keep revisiting and going back to. Now, I've been talking about this book all year long, so bear with me as I say the same thing yet again. Ron V is crafting a truly bold, giant, extravagant, operatic, romantic, tragic ballad for Batman. He's picking up on themes and story ideas brought about by Grant Morrison, playing with them, tweaking them, doing his own thing. If I describe the story to you and tell you it's about this family coming back into Gotham after being away for so long, Batman doesn't know anything about him, and in his hubris, he winds up kind of getting swallowed up by it, right? And you would say, I've read that story before, and I'd be exactly, but not ever told this way, with such a sweeping sense of epic nature. I love the book. Now, it's had a myriad of different artists: Raphael Albuquerque, Ivan Reis, Jason Sean Alexander. Every single one of these artists has got a completely different style, and sometimes there's multiple artists on each issue, and that a lot of comics don't do well, but Rom V's Detective Comics does it splendidly well. In fact, you get the sense that Rom is writing directly for these artists and figuring out his structure, knowing when the artistic change is going to happen, and that may be the case. This is totally structured like a giant, romantic, tragic, sweeping opera, and it's so freaking good. It starts off, when you first start reading it, you're getting into it, it's all right, but I trust Ron B, and we talked to him earlier this year, and he's like, trust me, there's a plan for this book, and it just keeps building and building, and then all the tension starts ratcheting up, and in the last couple of months, it's really stood out as one of the best superhero books on the shelves, and I think it's going to be something that we can go back and read and reread and discuss for years to come. At number 11, Universal Monsters, Dracula from Image Comics. Dracula, one of my favorite books, one of my favorite movies, the original Bela Lugosi, so James Tynion and Martin Simmons get the task to do an adaptation of that Universal Monsters classic, Dracula, starring Bela Lugosi, directed by Todd Browning. Anybody else would just do a simple adaptation, get the job done, it would be great. Especially with the amazing, textured, gritty, gnarly, and dark artwork by Martin Simmons, pumping out some of the best artwork of his career. I thought this dude leveled up at Department of Truth, but he's leveled up again at Dracula. Such an amazing representation of these characters: Dracula himself, Mina, Jonathan, and Renfield. Renfield looks so freaking crazy and scary in this book. It is so unnervingly awesome. It is rad. But James Tynion does something that I wasn't expecting. He's doing an adaptation of the movie, but he's telling us some of the bits in between the scenes of the movie, adding on a little bit more perspective from these characters. A little bit more of the emotions and motivations are being developed in these characters in this book. James Tynion's leveling up as a writer in the pages here. Maybe it's because he's playing with a rigid structure and he's got to like do something that fits in but still honors it. holy cow, it's different, yet the same. It's got that vibe, but there's different nuances to it. James and Martin have killed it with this. There's still just one more issue to go, but trust me, you don't want to miss this one. At number 10, Axe Wielder Jon from Kuroshi Comics. So we had writer-artist Nick Patera on the channel not too long ago, and he was talking about this book, and I got a very early rough look at it, and now the full thing is here. This was self-published, crowdfunded through Zoop, and it's finally been delivered into the comic book community's hands within the last month, and let me tell you something. It is gorgeous, it is bold, it is impressive, and it is awesome. It's a big, thick hardcover with a very simple story attached to it. It's about this axe-wielding dude who's had most of his face cut up. He's got these skulls that he keeps around him, all these axes in his cape, and this book is just a violent explosion of detailed artwork and just absolutely ridiculous awesomeness. It is such a fantastic book, right? And I love that Nick is taking the chance, betting on himself, right? Utilizing all of the tools that he's learned in this industry, working with people like Jonathan Hickman and others, and just doing his own thing and making something that's big, something that's bold, something that stands out, and something very much in the spirit of Jeff Darrow, especially Shaolin Cowboy, because it's Nick doing what Nick wants to do, and you can feel it on the page. Each page is just ridiculous with its amount of detail and texture, but at the same time, it has tons of room to breathe. It's exceptionally violent, it's big, and it's bold. The only problem with the book is that once you get to the end of it, you are ready for book 2, and we're just going to have to wait a tad bit longer. At number 9, Ice Cream Man from Image Comics. So Ice Cream Man makes the list every single year. This year is no exception, though it does slide back a little bit for me because even though we had some really solid issues of Ice Cream Man this year that are better than the majority of other comics that came out, they just didn't stack up to me to last year's Ice Cream Man. Last year, Ice Cream Man hit a stride and every single issue felt like one of the most important comics ever. But this year, we still had some really solid issues of Ice Cream Man. The one about the train hopping transients was really awesome. The one about the dude trying to find his missing daughter and he falls into the whale and it's representing the Pinocchio story. All of that stuff works so much. The one about the cartoonist who had committed suicide, so his siblings are going through his stuff. We're revisiting his life, his regrets, his depression, the world that he built within his cartoon. Ice Cream Man is just such a watershed moment for comics. It is the best comic that has been going on for the last several years. It has never failed to amaze me. It's never failed to be innovative. They're always trying something new. W. Maxwell Prince with the nuance of the human experience, talking about the hopes and dreams of every one of us, but at the same time, the tragic and brutally rough reality that we have to deal with sometimes, externally and internally. Sometimes things that are beyond our control, sometimes things that are very much in our control. Ice Cream Man is always super accentuated by the incredible artwork from Martin Morazzo, Chris O'Halloran, and good old Neon on the lettering. It's just one of the best. And if there is one thing that you take from this entire YouTube channel, Pop Culture Philosophers, please let it be this. Ice Cream Man is a book you need to read. At number 8, The Sacrificers from Image Comics. You know, I really like Rick Remender, but a lot of Rick Remender books I get into and then quickly fall out of. It's just hard for me to follow them issue to issue. I always like them better in trade paperback. Things like Black Science, things like his Captain America run, his Uncanny X-Force run, and even something like Deadly Class. Sacrificers, though, has been super compelling. So it comes across like the premise of Hunger Games or something like that, right? Where there's this community and there's a lottery and people get picked to have to sacrifice one of their children to the gods. And then on the flip side of that, we see the gods and what they do with these sacrifices. That seems like a very simple story that we've seen tons of times before. But the story is tragic. The story is sad. The story hits all of those emotional beats, and it's doing it with non-human characters. And the emoting that's done by these characters that were shown, not through words, but through the image, that is absolutely fantastic, and that's because of Max Fiumara. One of my favorite artists of this year really stood out on this book. I've seen their work before, but never quite like this. It is such a gorgeous book. It is such a truly compelling story. It's sad. It's hopeful. It's more sad than it is hopeful, but it really gets into this world, and the world building that's being done in this is similar to something like, I don't know, as some of the greatest people in comics. It's absolutely amazing, on a lot of people's list this year, and for good reason. At number 7, All Against All from Image Comics. Now, this one may have escaped a lot of people's notice here at the end of the year because it wrapped up towards the beginning of this year. The graphic novel was released towards the middle part of this year. This is absolutely stellar work from Alex Paknadel and Casper Wingard. Casper Wingard's artwork is so freaking amazing. We're usually used to this very refined, precise, clean artwork from Casper, but in this one it has a charcoaly grit to it. It's got a rough texture to it that makes it feel a little bit more visceral and raw, right? And that's totally appropriate for the story being told. Alex Paknadel is cleverly playing with the idea of something like Predator, but flipping it around. The aliens are the humans, and the human is the predator. Great, cool concepts, really interesting, complex sci-fi ideas, and a really nuanced take on the nature versus nurture kind of argument, right? It's playing with tropes from like Tarzan, but inverting them, flipping them around on their heads, playing a little bit with the alien and the predator tropes and all this kind of stuff. It is such a great story. It is visually told exceptionally well, and if you haven't read it, what are you waiting for? At number 6, Transformers from Image Comics. Transformers is bringing a level of excitement back to mainstream comics that we have desperately needed this year. To be honest, for me, most of what Marvel's been putting out, most of what DC's been putting out, just fallen a little bit flat. I'm seeing it here in the community. I'm seeing it in my comic shop. Just not a lot of people are excited for the big things that they are supposed to be excited for from the big two. So why don't we have one of the big three come in and bring that excitement back? And that's what Robert Kirkman and company have been doing with the Jon universe. And Daniel Warren Johnson's Transformers is the pinnacle of that. It's taking a familiar idea. We all know the Transformers, and even if you're not a Transformers fan, this book works not just as an introduction, but just also as a badass comic. It's got Transformers doing wrestling moves on each other. It's got Optimus Prime beating the crap out of someone with his own arm. It's got tragedy. It's taking ideas that we know that are very familiar and polishing them off and doing something different with them and rebuilding them and telling the same story but differently so that we don't know exactly what's coming, but it also feels very familiar and very honestly real to these original characters. You can hear Peter Cullen's voice on Optimus Prime when you're reading this book. And Daniel Warren Johnson is just one of the best writer-artists out there. He's one of the best cartoonists out there. He's got a dynamic sense of energy to this book, and something as blocky and as static as Transformers could be, no. You give it to Daniel Warren Johnson, this is a very lively, action-packed, dynamic, kinetically charged book that just soars. And what it's doing right now with bringing people back, they're starting to hear it. It's spreading word of mouth. It's breaking records. It's doing all kinds of crazy stuff that, for the most part, Transformers books don't do. This, to me, is a big moment in comics and definitely why it makes this list. At number 5, The Bone Orchard Mythos, Tenement from Image Comics. So every year there's a new book from Jeff Lemire and artist Andrea Sorrentino, and every year that book's pretty much going to make the top 10 because I love their work. They work so well together. Now, Jeff Lemire is already one of the best writers in the industry. He's prolific, he's consistent, and that's been going on for year after year. However, Andrea Sorrentino is one of the best artists out there. His use of composition, his use of black, his use of page design and layout is absolutely stunning. Fantastic, truly special stuff. When these two work together, it's next level. It's unlike anything else in comics. It is always so moody, always so atmospheric. Now, with the Bone Orchard Mythos, they've been doing these interconnected stories, slowly building up into the reveal here in the latest issue of Tenement about what's really going on and what this series is supposed to be. Now, Tenement is great, and even if you've never read The Passageway or 10,000 Black Feathers, you can just read this one, and I think it's the best out of the whole lot. It's focusing on 7 characters in this apartment building, and this is what Evil Dead Rise wished it could be. I love this book. And telling a very personal story, all these characters are fully developed, the artwork is truly mysterious and creepy and unnerving and unsettling, and then when you get to that big revelatory issue, boom, just blows your mind. You can just look at these images for days and days and days. Such a great book. Another winner from Sorrentino and Lemire. At number 4, Rare Flavors from Boom Studios. So every year there's a book that only has like 2 or 3 issues out, and I'm like, should I put this on the list? 3 issues into Rare Flavors, though, I'm very confident with putting it on the list. I have no doubt that this book is going to go to a very satisfying conclusion. Rom V writing a book with Felipe Andrade. Now, they were working together before on one of my favorite books, The Many Deaths of Layla Starr. This is kind of a spiritual follow-up to that, right? It's dealing with Indian mythology again. It's dealing with humanity again. It's dealing with tragedy and life again. But it's doing it in a different way. But at the same time, still kind of has that vibe and feel of The Many Deaths of Layla Starr, but its own unique perspective and identity. So it's about this demon from Indian mythology who likes to eat people, right? But now he's on Earth and he's a delicious consumer of culture. He loves culture. And upon the death of Anthony Bourdain, he gets inspired to show the world his vision of culture and beauty and what is the best of food, right? So it's about food, and each issue has a recipe, but the recipe, as compelling as that part of it is very much folded into the theme of the book. Like one issue is about this very hot recipe, a very spicy food, and all these peppers, and it's about how we got to have spice of life. We got to have a spicy life. We got to have something with excitement, but that also means that we're going to wind up getting burned, right? There's one about how certain food, in order to have truly a savory life, you gotta let it soak. You gotta let it take its time to develop and those flavors to come out. And of course, this dude is a cannibalistic demon, so he wants to find these people that are the peak of perfection, the peak of culture, so he can eat them up, right? So it's super cool. It's got this great whimsical sense of comedy and fun to it at the same time as being kind of dark and its subject matter, right? But it's a story about life. It's a story about life as it relates to food and culture, and the artwork by Felipe Andrade. Mwah! Magnifique! At number 3, I Am Stan from 10-Speed Graphic. I Am Stan is Tom Scioli's follow-up to Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics, which was a biography of Jack Kirby told in comic book graphic novel form, and now he's doing it with Stan Lee. Now, Stan Lee's definitely the most popular figure and creator in comics. This man changed comics for the better, for the worse. It's up to you to decide. This book doesn't cast much judgment, and that's what I love about it. Now, I know that Tom Scioli, as much as I love his art, he is a mark for Jack Kirby. Maybe one of the reasons why his work appeals to me so much is that I am also a mark for Jack Kirby. Ergo, I am a mark for Tom Scioli. I loved the Jack Kirby book that he did, but it did cause me to be a little bit concerned that maybe this would be a one-sided biography, kind of just trying to tear Stan Lee down, trying to show everybody that he wasn't quite the figure that he's been mythologized as, right? But that's not what's going on. In fact, this is a very real, brutally real story that's filled with tragedy, that's filled with victory, that's filled with romance, that's filled with struggle. This is the story of Stan Lee, and it doesn't put him on a pedestal, but it's also not just trying to bring him down. The way that the story is told, these excellent widescreen panels, lots of dialogue at times, kind of appropriating that Stan Lee style, it's just great. It's going to be sad. It's going to make you happy. It's going to make you respect Stan Lee. It's also going to make you go, man, everybody's flawed in some way, somehow. Such a good book. And if all you know about Stan Lee is this like myth that we've been sold by Stan Lee, the presenter of Marvel Comics, if that's all you know, definitely read this book, because not only is it one of the best comics of the year, but it will let you know a little bit more about the man who changed comics. At number 2, Swan Songs from Image Comics. So earlier I mentioned that Ice Cream Man hasn't felt as impactful this year as it did last year or maybe even the year before. I think the reason why is because writer W. Maxwell Prince has really been pumping a lot of energy into Swan Songs. So this is a mini-series, each issue self-contained with a different artist telling the story of an end of something. So the first issue is the end of the world. The second issue is the end of a marriage. The third issue is the end of the world, and so on and so forth. And he's also joined by some of the best artists in the business. Martin Simmons, Felipe Andrade, Casper Wingard. These are artists that have already been discussed here on the Top 20 of 2023, and for good reasons. W. Maxwell Prince knows how to pair himself up with an artist. He knows how to tell a story. So Martin Simmons, his first issue here, one of the best pieces of work I've ever seen from him. And if you loved All Against All, and that's your first Casper Wingard book, check out Swan Songs #2, see the difference in style and the similarities, and learn how Casper Wingard changes his style to match the tone of the book that he's presented with. W. Maxwell Prince just kills it though, here with Swan Songs. It's one of the best series of the year. Even the weakest issue so far has been one of the best comics on shelves. And issue 1, issue 2, and issue 5, they're like some of my favorite single issues of this year. Really stunning, exceptional work that's top of the game, and that's Swan Songs. And at number 1, Monica from Fantagraphics. Yo, Daniel Clowes has a new book out for the first time since I've been covering new comics here on Pop Culture Philosophers. And we've been doing this for several years, so that just shows you how long it takes for a new Daniel Clowes book. But I'm going to tell you, it's always worth the wait, and it's always one of the best comics on the shelves. Monica is no exception. This is a love letter and a tribute to EC Comics. It's a story, a very rather epic story for Daniel Clowes, told in different chapters, and each chapter is kind of appropriating a different style of EC comic. The horror comic, the romance comic, the war comic, the crime comic. And what feels very loosely connected at first, by the end of the book, comes together in a very elegant and masterful way. And that's what we've come to know and appreciate and expect from Daniel Clowes. If you're not familiar with Daniel Clowes, his epic work was 8 Ball, a self-published, not self-published, it was published through Fantagraphics, but a self-made book that came out very irregularly that contains amazing stories like a Velvet Glove, Cast in Iron, Ghost World, which most of you will probably be familiar with, Art School Confidential. He's done other books as well, like Death Ray, David Boring, which were originally part of the end of 8 Ball as well, but Wilson, Patience. Daniel Clowes is one of the best cartoonists out there, and you've probably heard him mentioned, even if you're not familiar with his work, for good reason. He hand letters everything. He does all of his own titles. He does everything in the book, the coloring, the art, the writing. As a writer, he is so freaking strong. And even if you look at the book and you're like, what's up with that art? Just know it's heavily inspired by Steve Ditko, and there's so much technical craft and precise skill that's attached to these books. Absolutely amazing. Monica totally lived up to the hype for me. I loved the characters. I loved the mystery. As I'm reading this book, putting it all together, when I get to the end, I see the whole spread and I'm like, holy cow, you've done it again, Mr. Clowes. Thank you so much. And then on my second read of it, it was even better. Knowing how the story connected, seeing those things laid out in the beginning. Such an amazing book. The coloring, the lettering, the artwork, the perspective, the writing, the packaging, the look of the book, the actual physical artifact itself is one of the best things that the comic book industry produced this year. And if you haven't read it, definitely check it out. It comes with my highest recommendation. So those are my favorite comic books of 2023. What are yours? What are your favorite books of this year? Let us know in the comments down below. Let's keep this conversation going because 2023 has some really great comics, and I'm even more excited for 2024 where we're going to have some more. So everybody, thank you so much for checking out this video. Thank you so much for your support for the channel throughout the year and throughout the years, and we're going to be doing more in 2024 as well. So thanks for watching along. Thanks for joining the conversations. We really do appreciate it. We'll see you soon. I hope everybody has a happy new year. Station, keep on reading. Pop, pop, boom!